Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting for November 13th. We welcome all those in attendance. We have a good crowd here this evening. We appreciate everyone that has made time to attend our meeting this evening. A few highlights. I'd like to recognize some people that are here in attendance first. We have a couple of our school board members, Betsy Landers and Suzanne Jones. If you could raise your hands. Did I miss any other school board members? Thank you for being here today. I know we're recognizing some teachers and students. We also have a very distinguished guest this evening, Commissioner Manny Bears-Grinder, the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Veteran Services. Very appropriate that we just celebrated Veterans Day, and we have an item on the agenda this evening. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here as well. A few other highlights. We've got 6 items of special recognition tonight. We've got citizens to be heard. We have the first reading of a sign ordinance, and we will meet this evening as a beer board after the Board of Mayor and Aldermen adjourns this evening. The invocation will be led by Reynold Douglas. This evening, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Cub Scout Troop 271 under the leadership of Scoutmaster David Chambers. They represent St. George's Independent School. Please rise for the invocation.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Gracious God, our Father, we thank you again for this day. We thank you for bringing us from where we've come from. We ask that you be a part of this meeting today, that you would be a part of the decisions and the discussions that would make this community even better. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Thank you. Good job. No, you're fine. You leave it easy. Thank you, Troop 271 from St. George's Independent School. We appreciate you presenting the colors this evening, and thank you for your service to the community and your future service to the community. The board met in executive session prior to the traditional meeting at 5:30 this evening, and during that time, the agenda was modified. Item 13 on the agenda, Resolution 17R25, West Tennessee Veterans Home Resolution, will move up in the rotation to item 10. And so item 10 will now move to item 13. That's the Development Contract 1220, a Landmark Bank. Are there any other modifications or adjustments to the agenda this evening? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
Second.
So motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
The agenda has been set for this evening. That takes us to item 5 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting held on October 23rd, 2017. There were no modifications or adjustments, corrections in executive session. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented to the public?
Move to approve. Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson? Yes. Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
The minutes are approved. That brings us to item number 6 on the agenda. We have several special recognition items this evening, 6 in total. The first one being a proclamation, and I will read that into the record at this particular time. City of Germantown proclamation, whereas the health of our community's people is the foundation for a caring and productive society, and our future rests with our ability to adequately treat and ultimately find cures for individuals who are afflicted with a variety of illnesses, including pulmonary hypertension, and whereas pulmonary hypertension, PH, is a chronic, life-threatening lung disease marked by elevated blood pressure in the lungs, and whereas, without treatment, PH patients live an average of 2.8 years past diagnosis, and whereas PH patients who are diagnosed early have a longer life expectancy, and whereas education can help with early diagnosis and funding for research can help find a cure, and whereas the Pulmonary Hypertension Association is a nonprofit organization that seeks ways to prevent and cure pulmonary hypertension and to provide hope for the PH community through support, education, advocacy, and awareness. Now, therefore, I, Mike Palazzolo, Mayor of the City of Germantown, on behalf of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, do hereby proclaim November 2017 to be Pulmonary Hypertension Awareness Month and urge all citizens of the City of Germantown to recognize the seriousness of this disease and the work of the Pulmonary Hypertension Association to find a cure. So we'll read that into the record. It does not take a motion or a vote. That takes us to item 6B on the agenda. We have a couple of education awards, and those will be led by Vice Mayor Mary Ann Gibson. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask members of the Germantown Education Commission to come forward. We have Mr. Steve Chandler, Scott Williams, Terry Harris, and our liaison for Germantown Municipal School District, Ms. Betsy Landers, also a member of the school board. And if I could have Ms. Morgan Grow come forward. It is an honor for the Germantown Education Commission to present the October 2017 Teacher of the Month Award to Ms. Morgan Grow. Ms. Grow is a third grade science and social studies teacher at Dogwood Elementary School, where she encourages students to develop a love of learning. Her students and their parents reported to the commission that Ms. Grow makes learning fun. She is loved and respected by her students because she teaches them so much more than academics. She helps them learn how to do their best and to be their best. Not only does Ms. Grow challenge her students in the classroom, but also in extracurricular activities. Ms. Grow is the sponsor of the Dogwood Environmental Club, where she helps Dogwood students and their families explore and understand the natural world around the school and in their neighborhoods. Through her leadership, the Environmental Club has enhanced the learning opportunities for all Dogwood students by creating a butterfly garden on campus, sponsored by the Wolf River Conservancy, and monitoring families of bluebirds that live on the Dogwood campus in conjunction with the Tennessee Bluebird Society. She also started the successful Dogwood Recycling Program. Ms. Grow, please accept our appreciation for your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day. Your award is sponsored by Principal Toyota, and your principal and many of your colleagues are in the audience as well, Ms. Teresa Price and several others of your teaching fellows. We thank you so much. At this time, if I could ask Mr. Greg Smith to come forward. Rightfully so. Mr. Smith is joined this evening by his principal, Ms. Kim Sanders, and Assistant Principal Stacy Johnson. It is an honor for the Germantown Education Commission to present the November 2017 Teacher of the Month Award to Mr. Greg Smith. Mr. Smith is a first grade teacher at Germantown Elementary School, where he makes student learning and development a priority. His students become part of a classroom family that Mr. Smith uses to create a nurturing and welcoming learning environment. His zest for life and learning is a real example for his students to emulate. He connects with his students by helping them feel important and valuable, which in turn allows them to focus on learning the critical foundational skills they need to be successful. His colleagues reported to the commission that Mr. Smith is a role model, of professionalism and embodies the spirit of collaboration and teamwork that is essential for creating a true community at Germantown Elementary. And we celebrate that here in our city as well. As a sponsor of the Germantown Elementary Jog Club, Mr. Smith spearheaded the school's fundraising efforts for the St. Jude Walk Run events for the past 2 years. Mr. Smith also sponsors the Germantown Elementary Terrific Kids Program, a student recognition program that promotes character development, self-esteem, and perseverance. Mr. Smith, please accept our appreciation for your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day. Your award is sponsored by Principal Toyota. Bear with me, I'm taking a moment because we have lots of recognizing to do. If I could ask Miss Allie Willoughby to come forward. Thank you, Allie. The November 2017 Youth Excellence Award is presented to Allie Willoughby, a senior at Briarcrest Christian School. Allie was described as goal-oriented and determined. She has a strong work ethic and focuses on achieving excellence in all her studies, especially the upper-level mathematics courses where she challenged herself and has matured as a student. As a student government leader, Allie's magnetic personality has helped her connect with her fellow students in a way that makes everyone feel valued and important. She is both a strong leader and a good friend, a genuine role model for all her classmates. She has also excelled in the classroom, enrolled in 8 advanced placement classes. She has a 5.1 GPA and scored an impressive 31 on the ACT college entrance exam. The national average is 21. If we could just take a moment to let that sink in. What an accomplishment. Not only is Allie a scholar, she is also engaged in numerous school-sponsored extracurricular activities. For example, the National Honor Society, the Science National Honor Society, the Spanish Honor Society, the Pep Club, Senior Buddies, the cross-country and tennis teams, and the basketball cheer team. Allie isn't just involved with school activities. She is intentionally engaged in community service by giving her time to the Step Up for Down Syndrome program, Mission 1-8 Day, and numerous youth activities at her church. She is a 2-time graduate of the Student Leadership University summer program in Orlando, Florida, and Washington, D.C. She represents the best of Germantown. She is dedicated to her academic studies, extracurricular activities, and community service. In recognition of her commitment to integrity, character, and service, the Germantown Education Commission is proud to present Allie Willoughby the November 2017 Germantown Youth Excellence Award.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of our Education Commission. Congratulations to our 2 teachers and our student. Well done, all 3 of you. That takes us to item D on the agenda, actually E, Employer Support of Guard and Reserve Patriot Awards. And I believe we have a presentation this evening by Mary Ann Epperson. And you may have a helper as well if you'd like to come forward and make your presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Aldermen. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm Mary Ann Epperson, and with me is Shirley Lee. We're here tonight to represent the National Committee of the Employer Support of Guard and Reserve. And that is a Department of Defense agency, mainly run by volunteers. We have one or two paid persons in the state. The rest of us are volunteers. There's about 5,000 in the whole country, and about 200 across Tennessee. Shirley's a former chair of our group. She's also a retired Master Sergeant, Army Master Sergeant. But like I say, we are volunteers. I'm one of those volunteers, kind of came into it from my human resources background and where I was familiar with the law commonly known as USERRA, Uniform Employment and Reemployment Act, which keeps the job for our military while they're away. Our mission is to gain and maintain the support of all employers, both public and private. We do that several ways, through education, consultation, and mediation. We have a ombudsman who's normally a lawyer if we need him. We don't normally need him. Most people do just like you're doing here, so we don't have that problem. But we work with all branches of the military, all 7 components: the Army Guard, the Army Reserve, the Air Force Guard, the Air Force Reserve, the Marines, the Navy Reserves, and the Coast Guard. And the ESG, or the guardsmen, make up 50%, almost 50% of the entire military now. So you can see that they're an integral part of the military. In fact, there are about 2,000 getting ready to leave right now from the 275th Army Division, Army Reserve Division. We know when they leave that somebody has to take up the slack, and especially in a police department that's on duty 24/7. We have several different award programs, and this is one of them, but we also do what's called a boss lift, where we sometimes send employers down overnight, for 2-night stay to the Gulf Coast, where they get to see exactly how the guardsmen train at Fort Campbell. They see the hurricane hunters and the Seabees. And another thing we have is a briefing with the boss, which was usually at the Air Guard base. It's a lunch where we let them tour the whole base and explain what's going on with all the guards. But for here, we have 5 members of your police department, beginning with the chief on down, that were nominated by Senior Patrolman Lowell Young. He's with the Air National Guard right here, the 164th Security Forces, right beside the airport. But if the nominees would come forward, please, I would appreciate it, along with Mr. Young. I understand that Chief Hall is unavailable tonight. He had some surgery, so we also have Deputy Chief Rodney Bright. We have Captain Nick Godwin. Hope I pronounced that correctly. We have Inspector Frank Hester and Inspector Alan Keller. So if you'll I'll read what it says on each plaque. The Office of the Secretary of Defense, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, recognizes all these gentlemen as patriotic employers for contributing to national security and protecting liberty and freedom by supporting the employee participation in America's National Guard and Reserve Force. And on behalf of all the men and the women in the Guard and Reserve, I say thank you again. Thank you. Did you have anything to add?
Ms. Epperson.
One more thing. This is called a statement of support. If you'll give this to the chief, and it just says, it's not anything legal about it. It just says what you're already doing, that you're supporting the Guard and Reserve for their duty. And but that may be where you put your
Absolutely.
HR.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to say, Mayor, just thank you to Ms. Epperson, and honestly, the person that deserves most recognition up here is Lowell Young for his service to our country. All we do is try to make sure that we cover in his absence, but he's an 11-year-plus veteran of this department, and he serves us well, and I can say that there's one character trait that I think runs common through law enforcement and military service, and that's selflessness. And we certainly see that in Mr. Young and our other officers that currently serve or have served in the military. And thank you to you for your volunteerism and for your recognition of his work. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Young, and thank you, members of the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve Patriot Awards. We really do appreciate this recognition very, very much. That takes us to item F on the agenda, donation, Germantown Community Library. Our librarian, Daniel Page.
Good evening, Mayor and Aldermen. This weekend I had an opportunity to do one of my favorite things. I had a daddy-daughter movie night. And to have a good movie, you need supporting characters to provide strength to the movie's plot. In many ways, the library serves that function in Germantown. Our focus on early childhood literacy and lifelong learning serve in a supporting role for much of what the city and community desires in a city of excellence. High test scores in schools, strong families, low crime rates, and ability to empathize with others. These are the types of things that our efforts support. Tonight before you is special recognition for those that support us, that make all of this possible. So tonight we want to thank some of our very special partners who provide funding for library efforts, so that if there's anyone here tonight in our audience who's a member of these groups, I'd like for you to stand. The Germantown Women's Club, Kiwanis Club of Germantown, and the Friends of the Germantown Community Library. We'd like to thank you tonight.
Daniel, thank you for that presentation. Thank you to all those organizations that have donated time, energy, effort, and dollars. And speaking of dollars, we actually have to accept donations as a board and as a city. Is there a motion to approve donations of $4,200 to the Germantown Community Library and to approve budget adjustment number 18-18?
Move to approve.
Second. There's a motion and a second. No discussion. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries, and we accept those donations proudly. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda. This is the time where all those teachers and students that are here, if you'd like to go home and have dinner or start on your homework, you may do so at this time, or you can stay and watch the people work. But I bet you would rather go home and start your homework. And we'll take a moment to let everyone begin to leave. Thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate your support of your students and your teachers. And we appreciate the support of the Kiwanis Club, the Germantown Women's Club, and the other organizations, Kappa Kappa Gamma, and the Friends of the Community Library as well. If any of those folks would like to leave as well, you are free to go. That takes us to item number 7 on the agenda, Alderman Liaison Reports. We move from position 1 through 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. The Senior Commission had its Senior Expo on November the 2nd. It had an incredibly large crowd. This took place at GPAC and also at the Athletic Club. It was a complete sellout. Every booth was sold out, and the Commission was thrilled with this. I want special thanks to Phil Rogers from the Athletic Club and Paul Chandler with GPAC for your efforts in assisting us and making sure that this event was a success. The Commission also discussed, and we will be planting a tree in memory of Dr. Charles Tucker Larkin, who passed away back some months ago. Dr. Larkin had been a member of this commission and also a resident of Germantown and a personal friend of mine for over 55 years. Historic Commission met on October 24th. We discussed plans for Santa's visit to the depot on December 2nd and December 16th. Santa will be very busy speaking with the children, and we expect all of you young people who have even younger ones to bring them to the depot. The Commission also discussed the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, which will take place on November the 11th, 2018. There will be an attempt to find the names of the service personnel, men and women, who lived in the Germantown area, then called Neshoba, for the reason that they didn't want to be identified with Germans. The Economic Development Commission met on November 2nd. The staff covered several meetings that they have attended, including presenting that Forest Heights Plan and Implementation Strategy at the State Planning Association meeting. The Regional International Conference of Shopping Centers met in Atlanta, and the Governor's Conference for Economic Development in Gatlinburg. They were very busy in their travels, apparently. New projects and construction updates were discussed, including Trevere and Thornwood. We are seeing remarkable growth in our key commercial areas, and Mr. Ross touched on a few new openings in Saddle Creek and the Village Shops out east. He also discussed the Vesta Home Show opening on November the 18th, and recently announced that Campbell's Clinic is making approximately a $30 million expansion. This is a really great news to the community. The Chamber also gave an update that included their membership drive. They had a 3-day drive, and they yielded 150 new members to the Chamber. They also talked about the Night Rider event and its success in its 4th year. The mayor joined the meeting and highlighted some of the growth of our community as seen through tourism and medical sector. He closed the presentation by thanking Chairman Klein and his efforts for over the last 50 years, and brought in surprise a gathering to dedicate the Economic Development Blue Conference Room, the Jerry and Julie Klein Room, for their contributions to the community. Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Beautification Commission met last Monday night to finalize the details on the city's holiday decorating plan. You'll be pleased to know snowflakes and banners are being installed on major roads this week and next. Depot Park and Municipal Park are also focal areas for the holidays. We want to remind everyone to be sure to attend the holiday tree lighting event scheduled for Friday, November 24th, beginning at 5 p.m. at the Municipal Park Lake. Santa will be inside City Hall to meet and greet the kids with refreshments for all. So if you or a neighbor or a city business want to celebrate outdoor holiday decor, we will have a holiday decorating contest as well. This year, nominations will be submitted by digital photographs uploaded to the city's website, and you can find more information about submittal, how you do that, through the website. That will be on our website and the city's Facebook page beginning November 20th. Prizes will be awarded to the contest winners. Neighborhood Preservation Commission held their annual Neighborhood Summit on October 24th. Highly successful, lots of community engagement with organizations from Kiwanis, Germantown Rotary, Germantown Women's Club, Germantown Lions Club, many of our commissions were represented. It really was to answer the question, how do I get involved? What the tagline was to get in the game. How do I get involved within our community, and how I can be a better leader in my neighborhood or in another organization. So that happened, very well attended. Again, thank you to the commission members, our chair, Allison Avra, our staff liaison, Sherry Clark, and of course we celebrated the Neighborhood Association of the Year, as well as those leaders and Neighbor of the Year. For Education Commission, they are busy preparing for the annual Battle of the Brains competition, which of course is the science, technology, engineering, and math competition that will be held at Houston High School on February 3rd. We will have applications being accepted up until December 8th. So if you know someone, a high schooler that goes to school here in our city, please encourage them to apply. If they have any questions, they can certainly reach out to any of our Education Commission members who at least a quarter of them were here tonight, or Stacy Ewell, who is our staff liaison. Mayor, our Board of Zoning Appeals meets tomorrow evening, and our library board will meet next week. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you to the Public Safety Education Commission members and residents who participated in the October 28th drug take-back. We just got the totals in. We collected 118 pounds of drugs that were turned in, so thank you. Also want to remind everyone that the holiday parade is December 9th at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor.
The Planning Commission met earlier this month and approved 3 items: the Watermark multifamily development for Still Heights, the site plan, and the warrant, which is on tonight's agenda for the Exeter Road project in the former Kroger site. And last but certainly not least, the plans for our new Germantown Municipal School District Elementary School. The Parks and Recreation Commission is meeting, along with city staff, continues to meet with park user groups, stakeholders, and other interested citizens who may have come forward seeking some clarification and discussion about the Parks Master Plan, which was presented on October 19th. The design team is now in the process of making revisions based on those comments and the work that the Commission has done with those stakeholders. I'm pleased to say that the compromise has been worked out with all user groups, and we look forward to the unveiling of the final plan. The Parks and Recreation Commission will meet on Thursday, November 30th. That's at 5:30 in the Community Development Conference Room to review these changes, and you can look for the amended plan to be on the website very shortly.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no reports.
Thank you, Alderman, and thank you all, the board. A few pieces of news from the mayor's office. I would like to also recognize a couple other people in attendance this evening. Eric Newsom, our Germantown Community Theater Executive Director, is here somewhere. Thank you, Eric. And our Joe Reed Award winner as the Service-Minded Volunteer of the Year, Margaret Owens. Please wave. It never gets old embarrassing you or your son, but thank you for your service. We appreciate it very, very much. I also like to thank our administrative assistant, Leslie Acera, who put together our boards and commission dinner that was held last Thursday, one of the best ever, and it's very much appreciated the work that she's put forward to make that happen each and every year. I'd like to thank staff, all staff involved with our inaugural Oktoberfest to make that a success. Despite some poor weather early in the morning, we had good crowds for the balance of the day. So all departments, I wouldn't name them all, Public Works, General Services, IT, Administration, Police, Fire, Community and Economic Development, Parks and Rec, Engineering, everyone was involved except for you, Mr. Roger. I'm kidding. Actually, you probably were as well. Thank you, staff, everyone who participated in that great event. We look forward to the second annual one coming up soon. From Economic Development, the October sales numbers were in, and we are at 11% over the conservative budgeting for October and 10% for the year. So Germantown, keep buying Germantown, is very good for the local economy. Also, some MAR data that came in from our friends at the Memphis Area Association of Realtors. Germantown continues to lead the entire region, municipalities, and the county. Year 2016 over 2017, year-to-date sales are up. The sales price is up 14.6%, compared with Bartlett at 6.3%, Collierville at 7%, Lakeland at 5.7%, Arlington at 7.8%, Millington 11.5%, Shelby County at 4.8%. October sales alone were 27.5% higher than 2016. And the last tidbit of information, saving the best for last, the city recently learned late Friday that we received some very, very exciting news. The city earned the prestigious Tennessee Center for Performance Excellence Award, the highest TNCP level of recognition. Germantown is the only municipality in the state and one of fewer than 30 applicants since its inception of the award in 1993 to achieve this level of recognition. Needless to say, this is a very huge accomplishment for our city administration and all department heads that put in years of focus in planning on strategic planning, meeting customer requirements, and measuring results in order to seek continuous improvement. Organizations apply to TNCP at one of 4 levels. As the levels increase, so does the depth and complexity of the application, which is based on criteria for performance excellence of the Baldrige Award, the national standard for recognizing organizational excellence. The city will be recognized at a banquet in February in Nashville, and again, this is absolutely the highest award that organizations like FedEx and AutoZone and Methodist Lavon or Germantown, they aspire to be at this level at times, and they're colleagues of ours in this process excellence that we call the Baldrige experience. And so I just want to say thank you to staff. People worked on this award for years and years. We were at a level 3 attainment and now level 4, which is the absolute highest, and we qualify for national recognition if we choose to take that path forward. That takes us to item number 8 on the agenda, citizens to be heard. Before I bring the citizen forward, I would like to make a quick announcement. We are looking for the representative from the Forest Hill Irene Exxon at 9100 Poplar Avenue. Is that person here? If you could see the prosecutor out in Peoples Street, out through the double doors, and he'll brief you on the beer board that which you'll meet later on. Again, that brings us to citizens to be heard. We have one citizen, Michael Stoll. If you could come forward. While you move forward, let me read the ground rules for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments should be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lobbying or lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. You'll have 3 minutes after you state your name and address and zip code for the record.
My name is Michael Stahl, 2546 Regents Walk, 38138. Listening to the liaison reports tonight, it's clear that the city is definitely booming. Sales tax receipts are up. Construction is going on throughout the city. Everything is booming in Germantown right now. But unfortunately, I'm really a bit saddened and nostalgic about a part of Germantown, a historical part of Germantown that will soon be destroyed, that will be leveled, that will no longer be. We have so few historical sites here in Germantown. And I almost missed it. I knew about it, but I almost missed it when I looked over the agenda tonight. But you're looking at Development Contract 1220, and that includes the total demolition of the Checkerberry and Book Depot. Now, we don't have much in old Germantown, but as long as I've been here in the almost 20 years, that's been really a center part of the city, going to look at the old books, or who hasn't bought a knick-knack from Nancy at the Checkerberry. But now it's going to be totally leveled. Now, is it for progress, for a new building, new restaurant? Is it for a new park? No. Unfortunately, it's for a few parking spaces. And it's sad that they're just going to put parking spaces in a place that's in the center of our city that could be part of the historical nature of old Germantown. Now, I remember whenever the bank renovated that house, and they did a great job of it. Unfortunately, they decided that a lot of the trees interfered with their drive-up window, and they ended up taking out some really nice trees and a very landmark Dutch elm, and even to the point where members of the tree board came in and protested in front of this group. Now, this building is cinder block. It's probably not much, but it's no less significant than the Germantown News building. It's no less significant than that cinder block strip shopping center that hundreds of people came out and protested 2 years ago and totally derailed the Germantown Road realignment. But this building is going to be demolished with no ceremony, with no remembrance. It's just going to be leveled, and parking places will be put there. It's sad that it's going to be happening. I expected protesters to be here tonight, the city historian or the ladies from the Historical Society, but nobody's here to protest the demolition of that building. And when it's
15
gone,
seconds, sir.
It will be gone forever. It reminded me of a Joni Mitchell song from 1970, Big Yellow Taxi. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Good evening.
Thank you. That concludes Citizens to be Heard, and thank goodness you didn't sing that. Takes us to item number 9 on the consent agenda. I'm sorry, that takes us to item 9, the consent agenda. Consent agenda was thoroughly vetted during executive session, and each item was presented to the board. I'll go through and read those items quickly for the board. Item 9A, contract lobbying services. Item B, contract sewer manhole rehabilitation. Item C, construction contract, Great Hall and Conference Center dimming system upgrades. Item D, construction contract, City Hall boiler replacements. Item E, construction contract, Germantown Athletic Club and GPAC boiler replacement. Item F, emergency purchase, East Bridge ditch repair. Item G, professional services agreement, Southern Avenue Water Treatment Plant, electrical panel replacement design, and CEI. Item H, purchase, annual cured in place pipes. Item I, purchase, annual services renewal and uninterruptible power supply battery replacement for Fire Station 4. Item J, purchase, Germantown Athletic Club Phase 3, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Item K, purchase, holiday employee gift cards. Item L, provider agreement, Germantown Baseball League, Germantown Legends, Houston Lacrosse, and Germantown Rugby Club. Item M, Resolution 17R24, TML Pool Property Conservation Grant. Item N, wireless transmission facility modification approval, AT&T equipment upgrade, 1926 South Germantown Road. Item O, another wireless transmission approval, AT&T equipment upgrade at 3990 Forest Hill Irene Road. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented to the public?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. That brings us to item 10 on the agenda. As mentioned earlier, when the agenda was set, item 10 is now item number 13, at least if you're keeping score at home. It's Resolution 17R25, West Tennessee Veterans Home. Mr. Lawton?
Mayor and members of the board, there is a significant project that hopefully will be constructed within Shelby County, and that is a new veterans home. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen has had several presentations by this group regarding the construction of the home and participation by local governments throughout the state, particularly in West Tennessee. In a recent work session, actual retreat last winter with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, representatives came and made a presentation requesting assistance and funding by the city. There's a lot of dollars involved to make this project work, and one of the things that is appropriate on our end is consideration and approval of a resolution pledging our dollars towards this project. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen, in the approval of the FY18 budget, appropriated $50,000 in the form of a matching grant that would be provided when the additional $50,000 in matching funds are provided to support the city's contribution. And so before you, you have a resolution, Resolution 17R25, that if adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen this evening and with the additional fundraising by the folks involved, will appropriate that $50,000 to go towards this very worthwhile project.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Are there any questions for staff? I'd like to ask a representative or two of the, if you'd like to all come forward, you may, but folks that are working with the West Tennessee Veterans Home and Commissioner Manny Bears Grinder, if you would come forward and maybe just give us a few remarks. Very appropriate that we have taken up this particular resolution as we honored Veterans Day on Saturday at our very own West Tennessee Veterans Cemetery. So, Commissioner, glad to have you.
Thank you, Mayor Palazzolo, Vice Mayor Gibson, Aldermen of Germantown. It's a pleasure to be with you here tonight. And if I may, first of all, just see how many veterans do we have here? Right. Thank you for your service. And it is appropriate that we are here 2 days after Veterans Day, where we take pause to thank our veterans for their service, for their part in making our country the greatest in the world. Without the men and women that have raised their right hand and our good Lord above, this would be quite a different place, and we would not be here meeting in a fashion as we are. But better than telling our veterans thank you is showing them our gratitude every day, not just one day a year, but every day. And the resolution that is coming before you tonight truly shows gratitude to our veterans, those that have served and those that need skilled care. And Shelby County has our largest veteran population in the state. Our state veterans' homes are maintained to the highest standard. They're all 4- and 5-star rated. And I cannot think of a better way to show gratitude to our veterans than to commit funds so that this home can be built here in Shelby County. So I'm very grateful to this community, Germantown. You've been great partners, and again, our neighbors at the State Veterans Cemetery, and where we can show our veterans, we can never repay the debt that we owe them, but I think we can die trying.
Well stated. Any questions for staff or with the representatives here or the commissioner? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, if I could, I'd just like to say thank you to your committee members, especially those who came out and took the time to come out to our work session, speak to us. It was touching, it was very moving, and then again, I think at the budget level, you guys came back to us, and again, I mean, I was moved to tears, and you're right, we can't place a monetary value on what our veterans have done for us. But we can show some form, and I think this is just a small token in giving towards them to show them that we do mean what we say, and we do say thank you in the strongest fashion possible.
Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a veteran myself, and I thank you for your efforts. I know quite a few of my fellow Navy personnel who served with me back in the early 70s who are now getting up in age, like I am. But, and thank you for all that you're doing. This is an outstanding project, and I'm really grateful that it's going to be here in Shelby County. And again, thank you for all of your service.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 17R25?
Move to approve.
Motion?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Your grant has been made, and we will stay in touch. Commissioner, I thank you. We have met on a couple occasions here in my office. We've had conference calls. I know you're passionate about making sure that our veterans are taken care of. I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mayor Luttrell brought all the municipal mayors together 2 years ago and got us all on board from Millington to Germantown and everything in between. Some of us have participated more than others, but we want this grant to help inspire the rest of our residents to step forward, and hopefully it'll lead to even more funds. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to thank, in particular, the members of the steering committee who have worked tirelessly on behalf of the veterans and only for the veterans by making the presentations that you all enjoyed. They're just a remarkable group of people, and I'll just reiterate, everybody's a volunteer on this committee. Nobody gets paid, but we all work really hard at it and are just thrilled to death that we get to do this. But also I wanted to point out that Vice Mayor Gibson and I will be starting right after Thanksgiving and putting together the plan to make that matching $50,000 a reality. I am convinced that we can do so and more, actually.
Good. We and the community will accept that challenge. So thank you. And I will make
Good deal.
I will make this this other announcement. If you guys want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you can, or you can go home and start dinner as well.
Well, I think maybe we'll go and get dinner.
Okay. We'll join you in about maybe 45 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Safe travels back to Nashville. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to item number 11 on the agenda this evening. That is warrant approval 2130, Exeter Holdings, LLC, Germantown Collection Shopping Center. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The purpose of this agenda item tonight is to consider one warrant associated with the site plan for 2130 Exeter Holdings at 2130 Exeter Road as part of the Germantown Collection Shopping Center. This property is within the T5 Urban Center Smart Code District as well as the Shopping Center Zoning District. As this board knows, warrants are deviations from the requirement of the smart growth districts and must be approved by both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Just to give you a little bit of context, this is the site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission on November 7th. The warrant in question is associated with the new 7,000 square foot retail building, the rear of which is located approximately 616 feet away from the rear property line. The SMART code requires for buildings that are being built on outparcels to be 40 feet away from any rear property line, but due to the project as it's working, reconstructing part of the old Kroger and repurposing that building, and then the siting and orientation of the outparcel building, the 7,000 square foot building, it requires this warrant due to the 616 feet that it is away from the building. Nothing associated with this warrant has anything to do with the buffer that's been there for the last 30 years between the residential zone properties and the shopping center zone properties. That's this area right here. 40 feet is only a portion of that buffer. Nothing will be touched as part of that project, as you can see from the site plan that was approved. And this is what the outbuilding will look like. It'll have 2 bays associated with it. And the design team has prepared a couple of alternatives. It was discussed at Planning Commission of adding railings on the side to give it more of a street presence, and so they provided this updated rendering for tonight's meeting. The applicant is at tonight's meeting and happy to discuss anything if you have any further questions related to this warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Questions for staff?
Mayor,
go ahead.
What happened to agenda item number 10? Did we move that?
That is the 13.
Okay.
Any questions for staff on this particular item?
Mr. Ross, what is the intention of that use of that building? What's that building going to be used for?
The outparcel building will be a commercial retail building.
Any ideas? Is it being custom built for any particular business?
They are recruiting tenants as we speak. The development team was in town today working on that portion of it. We can assume that they are trying to get in some dining of some sort based on the deck outdoor area that they've brought in as part of the plan, but we don't want to assume too much. But they are working hard to bring the right mix of tenants in for this redevelopment opportunity. I'd be remiss in not adding that the location specific of this building on the southern portion of the site, adjacent to Exeter, fits in perfectly with what was proposed as part of the 2007 Smart Growth Plan for the Central Business District.
Thank you, Mr. Wells.
Any further questions for staff? Is there a motion to? Go ahead. Go ahead.
There was some talk in the Planning Commission of changing the wall that's on the stage, which frankly I like the look of it. So are they going to change that to the open fencing, or do you know? Do you know what changes have been planned since the Planning Commission meeting?
They have worked up a couple of different iterations of the openness here. It's not necessarily a material design change. There's no code issues with this. It's something that the Planning Commission approved contingent on it being worked out as part of the final construction plans. It's really up to the applicant. They just, as you heard at the Planning Commission, expressed an interest in opening it up a little bit more.
And what changes are going to be made to the Kroger building?
They will be dividing that up into 2 to 3 retail bays. I did not include renderings of that building as part of this, since that's not germane to the warrant. However, they are doing some facade improvements to make it work with the rest of Germantown collection so that it can feel like a full and complete development. And so they're working on the same colors, adding a little bit more glass and openness to it, keeping the existing loading docks to be able to serve all 3 of those retail bays, and adding some windows on the north side of the building to open up that northernmost retail bay.
And it's my understanding there's actually going to be fewer deliveries than we had with Kroger. The neighbors are happy about that.
Yes, just based on the general size of the bays that they're creating as part of their redevelopment of the Kroger. You know, Kroger used all 67,000 square feet. Their largest bay is just short of 20, so you know there will be limited amounts of deliveries with less intensive retail associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve a warrant from 23-770.4.e to allow the proposed outbuilding to be approximately 616 feet from the rear property line on the subject property?
Make that motion.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes, based on the fact that this is an infill development, we're talking about reconstruction here, which makes the backyard setback or rear yard setback absolutely necessary. I'm going to vote yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes. Motion carries. It takes us to item number 12 on the agenda, ordinance number 2017-09, amendments to the sign ordinance related to permanent signage, first reading. Mr. Ross.
Thank you again, Mayor, members of the board. This is the first reading for proposed amendments to the Germantown sign ordinance related to permanent sign regulations for commercial areas. This is an effort to address concerns about visibility that have been raised regarding signage for tenants in small retail and commercial centers. The specific location within the code is 1434, and then we're talking about allowable signs for permanent directory signs, the location of those signs, the content of those signs, and the materials and illumination of those signs. These business owners have expressed a concern for centers that are between 30 and 70,000 square feet that have limited visibility from the street. In going through this amendment, trying to look for a way to make this work for these developments, we also determined that a requirement for landscaping being planted at the base of all ground-mounted signs, as recommended by the design review manual, should be integrated into the street landscaping. So we also added that to be memorialized for all project directory signs, no matter the size. So you can see that, and you notice that within your packet. The staff prepared this and showed that the highlighted portions in each of the areas where we're changing it were illustrated clearly in your packet, but I'm just kind of touching on them here. This is the landscape item that I discussed. Landscaping is required to be planted at the base of all permanent directory signs. Size and illumination, again, were also added. I think the best way to illustrate what this proposed sign change is going to look like from a material, content, lighting perspective is a sign that we already have that we use to put together this ordinance, and it's this secondary project directory sign that's across the street from the post office and library for the Germantown Plaza development. They've got their main sign on Exeter. However, they did qualify for a secondary sign. This is 50 square feet. It's 6 feet tall. It has a lightly landscaped base associated with it, and this is the exact sign type that would be permitted if these changes to the sign ordinance were to be moved forward through the 3-reading process. I am open to any and all questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve on first reading Ordinance 2017-9, amendments to the Germantown sign ordinance related to permanent signs, and set the second hearing and public hearing for December 11th, 2017? Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion, questions of staff. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Ross, as far as any interior illumination of those secondary signs?
No, ma'am. Materials and illumination, they may be illuminated by external lighting only unless otherwise approved by the Design Review Commission. So there is an option for a request. However, it's on a case-by-case basis to be determined by the DRC.
I am going to move this forward for second reading for the public hearing. I do have some questions, and we will continue the conversation. For me, our signage and the work that was done years and years ago by members of the Planning Commission, DRC, it is what sets Germantown apart. There's a distinct difference when you enter our borders that we look different, and it is one of the things is because of that signage. And so I'm very thoughtful about how we move forward with that. And so I appreciate you answering those questions. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Alderman.
Alderman Gibson, if you could share what those concerns are. I truly don't know. So what are you hearing from residents regarding the signage? And Alderman Barzeza, you can offer some input into this too. I haven't heard any pushback, and so that's why I'm asking.
Nor have I. It's just simply because I want to make certain that I fully understand a couple of the things that are in there. It's something that I can handle at the staff level. Would be happy to bring that back up at second reading.
Would you copy the board when you get those questions and the answers, please?
Yes, sir. That's what I was going to add, that with our staff report for the second reading and public hearing, we'll outline any conversations that we had and discuss those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Owens, were you making a motion to speak?
Just, I guess, a couple of comments. But,
okay.
But yeah, I think, you know, speaking from having worked in the Department of Development, there is always a concern, and we tried very hard to hold the line because it is a slippery slope. And you approve one sign, and then someone else comes by and they have a reason for justification. However, having spoken to some of our great corporate citizens here, I also understand their perspective, and so I appreciate the work Alderman Barzeza, you've done and the DRC have done in getting it to us. I'm embarrassed to say that I wish I'd gotten time to ask you more questions, and I'll move it forward as well to the public hearing, but I'd like to get with you and like what you said, copy all the aldermen. Do you have any idea, I hate to put you on the spot, about how many centers we're talking about either here that would qualify for that?
No more than 2 at this point.
Okay, that's great. Okay, good to know.
Any further questions? Alderman Barzeza?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And to answer your question, there's not been any pushback, but push for from the our corporate citizens who are requesting basically a level playing field in comparison to the larger centers. And I think we're acting in good faith by voting for this measure.
Any further discussion? It's been a motion and it's been seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
The motion moves to second reading. As an aside, Planning Director, I know back in the day, this would not be something we would even contemplate 10 or 20 years ago, would it?
Probably not.
No.
But it's a new world that we're living in here, and
I'm just talking about old history.
no, you're right.
That takes us to item, as mentioned earlier, item 13 and 10 flip-flopped. So now we are at item number 13, which is 10 in your program, if you're viewing at home on the agenda. Project Development Contract number 1220, Landmark Bank. Mr. Ross.
Thank you once again, Mayor and members of the board. This agenda item is for Project Development Contract number 1220 for the Landmark Bank. This project includes the development of a site to accommodate an accessory use parking lot. On March 28th of this year, the Design Review Commission granted approval for a change of use from commercial to accessory parking lot and for the demolition of the Checkerberry Building at 2245 South Germantown Road. Both the applicant's historical review and work with the State Historic Preservation Office, as well as the city's historian's research, found no historical significance of the Checker Building as part of that application, the minutes of which were included with your packet tonight. Moving forward, on May 23rd of this year, the Design Review Commission approved a preliminary and final site plan for an accessory parking expansion for neighboring Landmark Bank. It should be discussed, just as a matter of clarification for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, that any work within the old Germantown area goes to the Design Review Commission rather than the Planning Commission, so that's why the DRC reviewed both of these items at that level. This is a standard development contract with Landmark Bank for the construction of this accessory parking lot. It will add 9 new spaces to the area. They do have 55%, almost 56% of impervious surface. The maximum lot coverage per Old Germantown is 45%, but they were granted a relief from that as part of the Design Review Commission work, just based on the constraints of the site and trying to get it parked appropriately for the growth that Landmark Bank is seeing out of that institution. This project does work in terms of landscaping that goes along with the streetscape. Their designers worked with staff on making sure that the plant choices were aligned with the streetscape and that they were able to work with the area that was available to them so that we could dovetail our streetscape project in the old Germantown area into their project in an appropriate and reasonable way.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve Project Development Contract 1220 for Landmark Bank?
Move to approve.
It's a motion.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Questions for staff or discussion? Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor Gibson.
Mr. Ross, as far as after hours, when the bank is not in use, are they going to be allowing use of that parking lot for existing shop owners, restaurants?
Yes, ma'am. The bank has indicated that, as with their parking spaces that they have on the current site, they're not going to sign those with no parking or bank parking only. It will be available for use. You know, they'd prefer that banking customers use them first, but after hours, it will be open for anyone visiting our fine restaurants and other establishments within the old Germantown area.
I know I asked about after hours. What about that lunchtime crowd? Because I would imagine that there would be some give and take.
Yes, they've indicated that they manage the give and take today, and they'll continue to manage the give and take once these spaces are added. They see themselves as a community partner, and as such, want to make sure that those spaces are available.
Thank you.
Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important that we have, and Attorney Harris, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. What we have before us and what we are looking at this evening is a project development contract. As I understand it, we are not voting on the merits of this project. This is a standard development contract. So really the decision, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the decision was made, the authority was granted because it's in the Old Germantown District to the Design Review Commission. We, as a body, if we're looking at the contract, I think if we're going to reject this, we have to find fault with the contract. There should be something within the contract that we don't feel comfortable with. And I guess maybe I should have just asked you to give us an explanation of the process before I launched into that. But.
Well, I believe you're correct. That's where we find ourselves this evening. This particular project went before the DRC, and I wasn't present for that. That's not a commission that I personally cover. That would be others. So exactly what transpired at the DRC, Mr. Ross, of course, was present. Perhaps you were, or Mr. Alderman Barziza, and the applicant. So it's fair to ask questions as to what is proposed, but you're correct. All that's before the BMA is approval of the contract.
And so, if I may continue, Mayor.
You have the floor.
I would like, in the minutes of the, since we weren't privy, I don't think any of us except Alderman Barziza were at the Design Review Commission, I would like if either Alderman Barziza or Cameron, Mr. Ross, if you could talk about, after much discussion, Chairman Bruns called for a motion. Can you talk a little bit about the discussion that was had, the merits of the project? I know you mentioned that neither of these are on the historical register or to be found of, I guess, I don't want to say it incorrectly, have a historical significance. But I'd love to hear the thoughts of commission members.
Mr. Ross, you want to take a stab at that first?
Are you referring to page 89 of the minutes?
I think I am. Is that not the right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at the
yeah,
right
just
section.
As in typical with our minutes, we pare down a little bit and summarize, and so I would love to hear the thinking rationale behind the commission members and why they voted to do such.
I will, just for the, since we're on television, I'll remind everyone that our minutes our meetings are recorded, so if anybody does want to ever go back and watch those verbatim, the option is always available. But to the best of my memory, for both of those meetings, a significant amount of discussion was had at the March meeting based on the history and the transition and how that might work, and that the board, the commission did debate the merits, trying to determine if they were making the right decision. People did come and make some discussions, but this was a development that was worked out mutually by the owner of the Checkerberry building with Landmark Bank. This is not the big bank coming in and kicking her out. They helped her determine when she wanted to be out and worked around her schedule. But that was also part of that discussion, is to make sure that this wasn't a situation that worked in that regard. There was a discussion with the city historian at that meeting on the historical relevance of it. The architects on the Design Review Commission asked questions about the building materials and other pieces and parts of the area, and so I'd say that was part of that major discussion. And then at the May meeting, it was trying to determine how the parking lot worked with our city's plans for Old Germantown, and how the parking lot would work from a functional perspective as well as a future development perspective, and working with the Old Germantown district and those parking concerns that were alluded to earlier by Vice Mayor Gibson.
Alderman Owens, does that meet your satisfaction?
Yes, thank you.
Alderman Barziza?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we discuss the fact that that building, the Chockerberry Shop building, had flooded many, many times because it's actually below street grade?
I believe that was also brought up. The road has been paved so many times that it slopes towards the building, and the stormwater does run off into it. So as we make modifications north of the railroad track, this will be part of that to raise up those curb lines.
And given that information, and is probably one of the reasons why the Chocoberry shop moved, plus the fact I think they're just wanted to retire or what have you. But I think the Design Review Commission, I think, looked at all aspects of it, and it to me, it was a building that was built somewhere around in the early 50s, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. I believe that's the approximate
And so
time
that's
frame.
why it holds no historical significance. If you really reach back in time, the one building that did have historical significance is gone, and that would have been the old post office, the original post office. But it was a difficult vote for the commission, and taken into consideration, particularly with the fact that it's below street grade, the fact that it was flooding. I don't see how it could have been rented or acquired by another buyer and be used in any meaningful way.
It too was limited in its parking based on assessments by the bank as well as longtime visitors to the shop.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
Mr. Ross, I do have a question. Do you remember the presentation that the city hired that consultant to come in and do, where he told us about stacking dollar bills on a piece of property and related that to tax revenue? What was his name?
It was a grant by the National Association of Realtors. His name is Mr. Joe Minicozy from Urban 3.
Was it Joe Minicozy? I thought his name was Anthony for some reason. One of the things that I've heard from citizens, and they've all told me or asked me to vote against this, frankly, is that the city's sending conflicting messages. And I'm not taking a position that Landmark doesn't have the right to purchase this property and turn it into a parking lot. But at the same time, that presenter that came here talked about how valuable that property in that area was from a tax revenue standpoint. And one of the things that he talked against was building parking lots. And so he said, you don't get any revenue from parking lots. So he wanted us to build as much as possible on the smallest amount of land that we could, because he said we're running out of land. And so what citizens are calling me and saying to me is, why are you using that analogy when you want to push certain developments, but then when you're wanting to change things in old Germantown, you kind of throw those ideas out the window. And so I'm having a really hard time getting behind this tonight, and I understand what Alderman Owens is saying, and but I'm struggling with the conflicting message that we seem to be sending. So maybe you can help me with that.
Is that okay with the board?
Let me just speak on behalf of staff. Staff's not paid to come up with hypotheticals. I mean, the attorney gave his interpretation of the development contract.
I'm happy to answer just to kind of clarify.
Yeah, keep it short and to the point.
So Mr. Minicozy's point was a density per unit acre. The taxable value of this property is taxed on the commercial use, so the tax isn't going to necessarily change. Mr. Minicozy's point was more on a theoretical basis rather than an actual income tax revenue generation for the city. That being said, stacking multiple Checkerberry shops on top of one another would generate more from a density per unit acre basis. But just leaving the Checkerberry store there or a parking lot there is going to generate the same revenue based on the way that we are taxed here in Germantown and Shelby County. But point taken and understood.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, we're talking about 9 parking spaces, not
Correct.
a sea of Walmart parking spaces.
Any other questions?
I think that was the other thing, though, that they said, you know, if you're only going to have 9 parking places, does the city benefit enough by tearing down that building? And I'll be honest with the board, I don't know the answer to that, but it's certainly a question that our residents are asking.
Well, our business resident, Mr. Taylor, would love to have 36 people, 4 people to a car coming and parking there and going to his restaurant. So would the Southern Social folks. Alderman Owens?
Yeah, I've got to admit, I'm struggling with this too. and I fall back on, it's a development contract that we're looking at. Maybe there is no extreme historical significance of these buildings, but I don't think there's any way you can argue that that building does not contribute to the street and the walkability and the feel that is Old Germantown. And you know, I work a lot in Memphis, and Memphis, you know, in their downtown area, they wouldn't allow any surface parking to be put up. You know, they make people construct buildings because that real estate is so valuable. I'm talking out of both sides, I guess, here. I suppose I'm struggling, and I don't know which way to go on this.
Any other further questions for staff? It's been properly motioned. Vice Mayor, would you like? Mm-hmm.
Just a comment. Mr. Ross, if you could, the development contract for a parking lot, it is, I heard you say, almost not a revenue neutral, but by doing it, we are not gaining or losing revenue there because there's no one right at the moment that wants to come in and put in that multi-level building.
Correct.
By putting in a parking lot, short of grassing it for a park, future development could come to that location.
They could.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? It's been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
I would like to say that I think that's a great point, Alderman Gibson.
Point of order.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes, I'm voting yes, basically as mentioned
Point of
before.
order.
I'm voting yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Did Alderman Owens, did you get his vote?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you didn't speak loudly. The motion carries, and that brings us to the conclusion of our business as a Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We are adjourned. We're going to take about a 3-minute quick break and let the folks that are here that want to clear out, including staff as well. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and we will reconvene as a beer board in just a few moments. Beer Board to discuss 3 different violations. And let me get to that agenda item. The first item before the Beer Board hearing, suspension, revocation of beer license El Chapultepec at 2037 Exeter Road, Suite 2. Mr. Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask for any individual that is here on behalf of the El Chapultepec to come forward, please. Is there any representative for the 2037 Exeter Road, Suite 2, El Chapultepec present? We do show that we served a managing agent name, looks like it's Montez Estrada, on September 6th by personal service with Germantown Police Department. Officer Iabuchi made that service. There being no response, I would ask to be permitted to put forth proof and that we hear this matter in their absence.
Please continue.
All right. I would like to call forward Sheriff's Officer Pierce, please. We'll take that. Yes. I would ask that he be sworn.
Do you swear the information you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Would you please state your name for the board?
My name is Officer Christopher Pierce.
And are you employed by the Shelby County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir, I am.
And were you so employed on or about March 17, 2017?
Yes, sir, I was.
Did you participate in an undercover sting investigation of beer permit holders in Shelby County, Tennessee on that evening?
Yes, sir, I was.
And as part of that, did you participate in a beer sting at the El Chapultepec restaurant at 2037 Exeter Road, Germantown?
Yes, sir.
Did you utilize a cooperating individual that was 20 years old to assist you?
Yes, sir.
And did the 20-year-old enter into this establishment and purchase an alcoholic beverage?
Yes, sir, he did.
Was it a beer?
Yes, sir, it was.
And did you observe this purchase?
Yes, sir, I did.
Before this individual, this cooperating individual, made the purchase, did you verify by looking at his driver's license that he was under 21 years of age?
Yes, sir.
I want to pass forward a document for you, just ask you to identify that, please.
Yes, sir.
Is that a copy of the driver's license of the cooperating individual?
Yes, sir, it is.
And does it clearly show around the edge of the photograph that this is an under 21 individual?
Yes, sir, it does, until 12/1 of this year.
Okay. And upon witnessing this sale to this under 21-year-old cooperating individual, did you call in the rest of your team to actually issue a citation, misdemeanor citation?
Yes, sir, after the sale was made. Yes, sir.
After the sale was made?
Yes, sir.
And all of what you've testified to occurred within the corporate limits of the city of Germantown?
It did, yes, sir.
I have no further questions of Deputy Pierce.
This time, does any board member have a question of the deputy? Mr. Prosecutor, I believe this may be the first for me that someone has not shown up. So as far as the resolving of guilt or innocence, how do we proceed with that?
Well, I think we first need a motion that by someone and a second that the violation did in fact take place.
So do you want, I'll read that motion that's here. Did you want me to use the word guilty in there, or?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to find El Chapultepec, located at 2037 Exeter Road, Suite 2, guilty of a violation of the Germantown beer ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
The defendant is found guilty. Do you have a recommendation for
Well,
this board?
This appears to be the first beer violation of this particular establishment, although there was a liquor violation that this board does not have jurisdiction over, and I wanted to make it clear that some of the notes, the report we had to the board made reference to the fact that there was a previous liquor violation. That is not something this board would have entertained. But the city's concerned that no one is here, and it just sends the wrong message to the city that they don't have anyone here to answer or address this.
Mayor, I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So I understand what you're saying, that the liquor violation is not within our purview or jurisdiction, but are you telling me that we can't consider that when we're considering?
What I'm saying is we don't have a previous beer violation on this beer permit holder. Now, you can consider whatever you choose to consider in determining what would be appropriate, but this individual has not been before this board before. Okay. That's the only point I was trying to make.
And did the liquor violation occur in 2013? Is that correct?
From the information we have, it did occur in 2013. The recommendation that the city would have is, because of the violation and the fact that no one has appeared, that we would recommend that there be a suspension of their permit for not less than 30 days. And I have, in certain circumstances, just requested an indefinite suspension, and see if they're going to petition to come back and come before the board to get their permit reinstated or show just cause as to why they should. But I just think it sends the wrong message not to do something more than what we would normally recommend on the first violation would be a 14-day suspension or a civil penalty in lieu thereof.
Mr. Prosecutor, would you recommend impose a suspension, an indefinite suspension, in essence, to drive them back to you?
I would
recommendation?
Yes, that would be my recommendation.
Is there a motion to impose an indefinite suspension upon this particular applicant, El Chapultepec?
I think the the suspension needs to be beginning 7 days after today. I think our ordinance requires, once we take action, that action takes effect in 7 days.
Question of the board. Hold on a second. Alderman Barzizza.
My question is, wouldn't it be enough just to suspend it for 30 days as opposed to an indefinite? And that would shake them up enough. I mean, having had a lot of experience with the Memphis Beer Board, it's something that they would have done. Well, my initial recommendation was a 30-day revocation. And so, given the same circumstances. Given the same circumstances. Yeah. There may be a death in the family. There may be some just cause as to why they didn't appear. There may not be. I think that in itself, the 30 days would shake them up enough to get a hold of you and request audience with you to discuss the matter. They may have had because I don't recall that we've ever had anyone not appear either, so this is difficult. The only time I can recall there was not an appearance was someone that was surrendering their permit. Well, if I may, and using the Memphis Beer Board as an example, when the person or the business doesn't show up, the owner of the business or manager, what have you, they don't show up, they essentially do what I've suggested. They have just suggested here, just to get them back to explain themselves. So that's what I would recommend.
Alderman Massey?
So they checked the license apparently and just didn't find, for whatever reason, it's sold in the beer. Do you mind if I take a look at the license?
you have another question, Alderman?
So so this particular license isn't one that's stamped with the under 21. Is it on here?
On the right side of the picture, the red strip, it's kind of hard to see in the black and white. I'm sure the prosecutor has a color copy of the individual, but it is on that picture.
Yeah, it is hard to see.
I actually, if I may, I've got a color copy that's probably a better.
While you're looking at that, Attorney Harris would like to make a comment or two.
Yes, members of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, our officers have information about the presence of the defendant in this matter, and I think I think you should consider hearing from them because apparently they were present and left. So one of our reserve officers has that information.
The two women that were sitting back here, when they came in, they showed me this letter, said, "Where do I go?" And I read the letter, it's a beer board, and I told them that it was in here. I told them it was at the end of the, so I don't know, they might have had child care issues or whatever, couldn't stay, but they were here initially for quite some time.
Mayor, Alderman
Yes.
Barziza, I think, was suggesting the 30-day revocation as opposed to the indefinite suspension. Yeah. I tend to want to go that way too.
Vice Mayor, you had mentioned, or you had motioned that you wanted to speak.
I'm good, thank you.
Do you have a recommendation for this beer board?
The recommendation would be for a 30-day suspension. And this permit holder can petition, our rules provide for them to petition for rehearing. If they have just cause as to why the matter should be reheard, then it's something the board can take up.
Is there a motion to approve a 30-day revocation of the license of this particular offender?
Suspension.
Suspension, sorry. It's a motion? Second. It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barziza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
I think in light of the fact that they were present here and it was not just a blatant disregard of our rules, I will vote yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Takes us to item 14B, beer board hearing, suspension, revocation of beer license, La Hacienda Mexican Restaurant, 3170 Village Shops, Suite 27. Mr. Prosecutor.
Mr. Sarwar, are you present for La Hacienda? Would you step forward, please? Would you identify yourself for the board, please?
My name is Mahmoud Sarwar.
And are you the owner or operator of the La
Yes.
Hacienda Mexican Restaurant?
That's true.
You've been cited, or your business has been cited for violation of the beer ordinances pursuant to the unlawful sale to a minor on March 17, 2017. On behalf of your business, are you admitting or denying that that took place?
Admitting.
There having been an admission, the city's proof would have been by sworn testimony from Sheriff's Officer Pierce that on March 17th, during this same undercover sting investigation of beer permit holders in Shelby County, that the cooperating individual, the same cooperating individual that gave, that was previously utilized, purchased a beer from the La Hacienda, and the clerk did check the driver's license but sold the beer anyway. Officer Pierce witnessed the transaction, and the sales clerk was issued a misdemeanor citation in lieu of arrest.
Is there a motion to find La Hacienda Mexican Restaurant located at 3170 Village Shops guilty of a violation of the Germantown beer ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor? So moved. It's a motion. It's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions of staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barziza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens. Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Prosecutor, do you have a recommendation for a penalty?
I do, but I would first like to hear from, and would like the board to hear from Mr. Sarwar about this and for any information he would like to offer in mitigation.
It's such a business. We try our best, the best anybody can do it, to check, verify it, double verify it, put a sign up there, and we try. We know somebody came up with a very intelligent things. They put a clock. It reverses from the day of the 21 years. So now they're looking at the clock, which they remember it now. I think that thing is working fine, and I hope it never should happen again.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Sarwar?
Mr. Owens?
Any type of training that you were giving your employees?
We always have training, yes, sir. They're trained. They're trained by ABC. They are trained house training. And sometimes we do like this, we ourselves send somebody underage to check them out. I think nobody in the city, Germantown, Collierville, Memphis, not doing what we are doing it. Because I am honestly against selling alcohol to minor. It's in my blood.
Vice Mayor?
You mentioned that the clock is there now. Was that there at the time of the offense?
There was not a clock. You had to change it every time.
A date.
Yeah, but now you don't have. No, you don't have to change.
It automatically does it.
It's automatically. You know, like any regular clock.
Yes.
You have it, but you start from the day, from 81, and every day you extend the day and extend the day, extend the day. It's helping us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, go ahead, Alderman.
What is your policy in regards to, and when an employee does this, you terminate them, or what do you do?
Now, we used to terminate them before. The way it is right now, it's very hard.
Do you suspend them? Do you give them any kind of punishment?
We give them a 2 weeks suspension, yes. It's very difficult. People, the kids, they have a kid. And
tough business.
Yeah, termination is good.
Thank you.
Alderman Yada? Go ahead, Alderman Massey.
Mr. Swar, do your employees know to look for the red label that goes down the license that says that they're underage?
Recently I did not ask them, I did not check them, I did not verify it, because this thing came not too long ago, the red and the 21 years. Okay, that was not there.
Have they been retrained to look for that?
Yes, we will. I will verify back again tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Say that again. On the license, it was not there?
You know, in my age time, when we were selling the beer, serving the beer,
I see what you're saying, yes.
So these things were
new.
It was just a background. Sometimes they have red background, the red color, now it's a blue color, and that kind of color we used to verify, check it out.
But
Alderman Owens.
But the license in question that we have was clear in terms of it?
Yeah, it was clear.
Okay.
Yes. What had happened is, I can give you a real example. You know, one time I gave a silverware, okay? This spoon goes here, knife goes here, simple thing. And the end of the day, we saw silver was the spoon was in the fork and the fork was in the spoon. It don't need any IQ, it don't need to check anything, but it's a human making mistakes. It's a mistake, it's a blunder, whatever you can call it. It happens. We try our best.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, do you
City's
have any?
recommendation in this matter would be a 14-day suspension or a $1,000 civil penalty in lieu thereof.
Is there a motion for a 14-day suspension or a $1,000 penalty in lieu thereof?
Question.
Go ahead.
Is that consistent with what we have done in the past?
The civil penalty would be $500 greater than what we would normally recommend for a first-time violator. suggested the civil penalty to be a little bit greater because of a prior liquor violation. It was not a beer violation, but I do think it's something the board can consider in determining what would be the appropriate deterrent for this type of conduct occurring at the establishment.
All due respect, he's already paid his fine for the liquor violation.
I understand that. I understand that.
It's a recommendation from the city prosecutor. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
So moved.
It's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Pass.
Alderman Massey,
I'm sorry, I think we're all still struggling with the previous vote compared to this vote. And if we need to reopen the discussion before we take the vote, then perhaps that's what we do. But I don't know about the past rule and how that would work. But I think that's what led to Alderman Owen's question and to Alderman Gibson's pass. So there does seem to be some question about the consistency of our votes here. I think the folks from the other case have come back into the chambers. So
currently, there's a motion and a second. The roll has been started. There's been a pass. What is your decision?
I'll pass.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barziza,
No.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
No.
The motion carries. That takes us to item C on the agenda. Forest Hill Exxon, 9100 Poplar. Mr. Prosecutor.
This matter, just have a seat and I'll speak with you afterwards, Mr. Sarwar. I want to get you to pronounce your name, sir.
Aziz Ketani.
And are you the owner or operator of the Forest Hill Irene Exxon at 9100 Poplar Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Your business was cited for a violation of the beer ordinance for a violation alleged to have occurred on March 17, 2017, where your employee sold beer to a minor. Do you admit or deny that violation occurred?
Yes, I.
All right.
Yes.
You admit or deny?
Yes, I admit.
You admit it. For the board's consideration, our proof would be through sworn testimony by Deputy Roman of the Shelby County Sheriff's Office that a cooperating individual working with the Sheriff's Department who was 18 years old at the time entered into and she observed purchase a beer from the employee working at Forest Hill Irene Exxon. The defendant did not check the cooperating individual's driver's license, and that employee was issued a misdemeanor citation in lieu of arrest. There having been an admission, I would ask for a motion to find that the violation did in fact take place.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Is there a motion to find Forest Hill Irene Exxon, located at 9100 Poplar Avenue, guilty of a violation of the Germantown beer ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens, Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barziza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to a recommendation.
I would ask Mr. And sir, I must apologize, Mr. Katani, would you like to speak to the board and offer any information in mitigation?
Well, I have brought my employee who's working for 19 years, and his record shows that he did not had any violation. Probably one of his bad day, and I sincerely apologize on his behalf. It shouldn't have happened, and I'm against selling beer to any minors. I mean, ours is a very small store, and it could be a very easy thing for me. I would just fire him, but he's been working there for 19 years. I have given him a chance. He has gone for training and, and the record shows, I mean, he's working in Germantown for 19 years, never had any, records against him that he had, sold beer to any minor till date. So with sincere apologies, I would like you guys to consider and
thank you, sir. Any questions for the particular owner? Do you have a recommendation, Mr. Prosecutor?
Yes, sir. This is the second violation at this location, the first having been November 24th, 2015, which would be about 16 months between the violations, which causes the city some concern. Because it is the second violation within such a brief period of time, the board can suspend a permit up to a year. You can revoke a permit, or you can suspend it and issue a civil penalty up to $2,500 in lieu of a suspension. The recommendation that I would make on this matter would be a 30-day suspension or a $1,500 civil penalty in lieu thereof.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Is there a motion to levy a 30-day suspension or in lieu of a $1,500 fine?
Move to approve.
It's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barziza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
If we may revisit the agenda item 14A, it appears that there may have been a re-entry of individuals that may have some interest in El Chapultepec. Would that be proper for the city to ask that be revisited?
I'll ask the city attorney.
To get there, what we would need to do is have a member of the board make a motion to reconsider item 14A while we're here tonight. If there's a second, and if that passes, then we could reconsider.
Can I verify, first of all, that these individuals are interested in that?
Certainly.
These individuals are, in fact, here. One is here to represent El Chapultepec, the violator, the violator, and the other is here to interpret for the violator.
Is there a motion from the board to revoke the earlier, reconsider the earlier motion on the beer board hearing suspension revocation of beer license for El Chapultepec 2037 Exeter Road, Suite 2?
Move to approve.
It's a motion and a second. Vice Mayor motion. Alderman Barziza second. Continue, Mr. Prosecutor. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barziza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Carries now. My apologies, Mr. Prosecutor.
Yes, sir. If we could call forward the individuals that are here on behalf of the violator.
Hello.
Would you identify your name, yourself for the board, please?
Sure. I'm Monse Estrada, and I'm just here to translate for her. I work for her as well.
Can you ask her to come forward, please?
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Would you ask her to identify herself for the board?
Okay, que te identifiques.
I'm Erica Castrillon, El Chapultepec.
And would you tell the board what she just said?
She's Erica Castrejon from Chapultepec. She is the owner of the restaurant.
All right. And would you please tell her that we need to know whether or not she admits or denies that beer was sold to a minor at her restaurant on March 17, 2017.
Okay. ¿Quieres saber si tú admites o niegas que se vendió el alcohol ese día? Además, she admits.
Okay. Will you please tell her that our proof would be that the sheriff's department, I want to ask you to interpret as I'm speaking, please.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, can you?
The proof would be
La prueba sería
that the Shelby County Sheriff's Department
que los policías del condado de Shelby,
using an individual that was 20 years of age,
estaban usando un individual que tenía la edad de 21,
purchased beer
compró cerveza
at her restaurant
en tu restaurante,
located at 2037 Exeter Road,
localizado en 2037 Exeter Road,
in violation of the Germantown Beer Laws.
en violación de la ley de Germantown, de la cerveza.
There having been an admission and a factual basis, I would ask the board for a motion to find the violation took place. And would you tell her what I just...
I'm sorry, she was...
Tell her that I've asked the board to make a motion.
Okay, dice que ya le pidió al board que haga una como que moción, a ver si pueden...
To find that the violation did take place.
Okay, para que sepan ellos que lo que pasó, sí pasó, la violación pasó.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Is there a motion to find El Chapultepec located at 2037 Exeter Road, Suite 2, guilty of a violation of the Germantown Beer Ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Prosecutor?
Does she have anything that she would like to say to the board?
¿Hay algo que tú le quieras decir al board de la cerveza? No? No.
Do you have a recommendation?
Yes, the recommendation would be similar to the recommendation that was made in the matter of the La Hacienda, which would be a 14-day suspension or a civil penalty in lieu thereof of $500. Actually, strike that. She has a prior liquor violation, so that there would be a $1,000 civil penalty in lieu thereof.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Is there a motion to approve a 14-day suspension or in lieu of a fine of $1,000?
So moved.
It's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So there's no confusion for me as far as guilt or innocence really with any of the merchants that have come before us. The questions that I have had and I struggle with, and I believe my colleagues do as well, in some instances, is on the recommendation for sentencing or what the fine will be. So moving forward, Mr. McDaniel, I would like to have some conversation about what is to be expected, because I think we all work in a state of preparedness, and so it does feel rushed, and I understand that you have to get testimony from the defendant and things like that. That is part of your process and recommendation, but that would be helpful to me.
From the city's position, we have to first of all see what the violator has to offer in explanation or in mitigation in order to come up with a recommendation. We want to be consistent with what we recommend, but sometimes it's comparing apples to oranges. We've got first-time violators, but we have first-time violators here that have had previous liquor violations in the same city, even though it's not a violation of an ordinance before this board. We just can't turn our backs on the fact that this is repeated conduct of the same manner at that facility. And so I don't believe that a first-time violator, typically we would recommend a $500 civil penalty in lieu of a 14-day suspension. Second violation, 30 days. Third violation, it may be 45 to 90 days, depending upon the period of time within which the violations take place.
Since these beer boards come infrequently, I think that for my process, that will be a phone call that I will make prior to our session. Just simply, Mr. McDaniel will remind me what that expectation would be.
And one of the things we've done historically, I know I've done it in Collierville, and I believe I've done it before here in Germantown. We've had workshops prior to the hearings. And sometimes those workshops, if we meet 30 minutes beforehand, we can, sort through some of those types of questions before the hearing, and then that way we'll have all of the data in front of us, and you'll kind of get an idea as to what the city's position might be.
Thank you. Any other questions? It's been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson? Yes. Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Be consistent with previous vote.
The motion carries, and all work has come before the beer board, but seeing no other work, we are adjourned.